Thanks everyone for joining us for our monthly LeanLaw product meetup. We pick different topics, different things to focus on. In some cases, it's new features in our products. In some cases, it's certain themes or things that users struggle with or we think you could benefit from. Today, we're talking about, well, it's kind of inspired by our last meetup where we talked about client and matter setup. And we had some requests about some more in-depth conversation or demos about rates, specifically managing rates and also the billing type, different billing types we have. There was some confusion there, so we decided, okay, let's go more in depth on those topics this time. Feel free to ask questions in the chat or in the Q&A box. We'll try to get to them, sort of as we move through the webinar. We might get to some of them at the end. If we don't get to your question, we'll definitely follow up afterwards. There might be, we might have too many questions, or we might, for other reasons, overlook it. But rest assured, we will get back to you somehow. I think what we're going to do, Chase is going to run through today's topics with a demo and a sort of hands-on chat. Then we'll have questions and so on, and then afterwards we'll reserve a few minutes, probably 10-15 minutes, and I'll share a few sort of what's new and what's next in LeanLaw topics. So we'll get to that at the end. Did I miss anything, Chase?
Nope, I think that about covers everything.
And if you have topics that you'd like us to cover in future sessions, just let us know, and we're always trying to come up with something relevant. So I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Fred. I'm CTO at LeanLaw, responsible for product development, and I'm going to hand it over to Chase. Who are you? And
sometimes I ask myself the same question. So for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to chat with me yet in the support, my name is Chase Sullivan, and I am the customer success manager for LeanLaw. So if you ever have questions, you're probably going to end up talking with me or one of my teammates. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. So like Fred said, this kind of came out of a conversation we had, or the webinar we had last month on client and matter structure, and someone asked, well, can we talk more about rates and billing types? So let me go ahead and share my screen here. There we go. Fred, how's it look?
Looks great.
Okay, good.
I think we can all see it.
Good. Okay. So we're going to go through the list of the types of billing as you see here on the left. But before we do that, I actually want to start with the conversation about rates, because rates is kind of the basis of how a lot of these types of billing work, especially hourly. If you're billing hourly, you'll want to set up and change rates. And we do get a lot of questions actually about how rates work, how to update rates, how to change rates, how to add new rates, because that's important for a lot of firms to be able to have customized rates per attorney, per client and matter, per even individual time entry. So let's go ahead and start there. And I'm going to start with actually a brief overview of how you go in and set up rates to begin with. So whether you're starting out in LeanLaw for the first time, or if you're coming back and adding rates for a user who may have just joined the firm. So going to jump out of the billing and rates section here and actually up to settings in LeanLaw. Up there, the gear icon. And the first place we're going to stop off is the My Rates section. So this is where you or most users in the firm would come to adjust their own personal rates, excluding users like timekeepers who can't adjust their rates. And we see here I've got my standard rate of 200, a family and friends rate, corporate rate, and then the special shellfish rate. Now, any of these rates can be updated by me. So if I wanted to, say at the end of the year, update my standard rate, I could come in here and change that. Well, that's the same one, but you get the idea. I can also add other non-standard rates by clicking the Add Non-Standard Rate button here. Now, some firms are going to use this more, some less. It's really dependent on the user. But most of you, I'm going to assume, are people in the firm that have secretarial or bookkeeper or accounting positions and end up doing a lot of this work for other users in the firm. And we're able to do that through a different section. So we're going from My Rates up top here to the Users section, where we manage our users. And by clicking on an individual user, and then the Update Rates option here in green, we're actually able to see that same list of rates we saw before, but now we're able to make those same changes to any users in the firm. So currently I'm looking at my own. If I wanted to cancel out here, and let's take a look at Frank Lawler, if I needed to change his rates, pop in here, say I needed to change his standard rate to 100, there we go. And then I'm able to save those rates. Now you'll notice anytime you update rates in LeanLaw is going to ask you how you want to affect the existing items. If you want to change anything new, if you want to change everything old. So let's take a moment to chat about that, because I definitely do get a lot of questions about this. So we've tried to save this rate, and now LeanLaw is asking us which clients, matters, time entries we want to apply this to. So the first option is keep rate for existing matters. So do we want any of our matters we've already set up with this rate to stay the same? Next option is change matters, keep time entries. So if we wanted to change that rate for all matters, meaning that anytime we track a new time entry for that matter, it would use the new rate. But any existing time entries, that keep time entries part, any existing time entries would remain at the old rate. And then the last option is just flat out change everything. Everything new, everything old and existing that hasn't been billed. And I should point out, this is only going to change unbilled items. It's not going to retroactively change things you've already got sitting in drafts or approved. So I'm going to go ahead and change for existing matters on this one. Continue. Give it a second there to catch up. Great. Now, sometimes we do get questions like, typically at the beginning of a year, a firm will go through and update their rates, especially for the partners or principals in the firm. And so we get questions like, hey, Chase, January 1, starting January 1, I want the partner in the firm to go from 300 to 325, because every year there's a $25 increase. Great. Currently, the best way to do that is to go in on January 1st and pick that update new time entries option. So update the matter and new time entries. The tricky part is we aren't able to go back and say you're asking on February 1st, hey, we want a January 1st. That's a little more involved. And so I would need to tag Fred in to do some of that work for me. So it is a lot easier to make those rate changes when you need them, because we're not able to do that retroactively. I don't see any questions pop up yet, so I'll go ahead and take the next step here. Okay, so we've gone through and looked at how to add and update rates for users at the firm level. That's kind of at the top level, right? What if we want to set custom rates on the matter level? So on an individual matter, I want to use a different rate that isn't my standard rate. Let's take a look at how we do that. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this shellfish matter and the billing and rates option here. Okay, and here's me set as the responsible, and currently it's using the standard rate. Again, because the standard rate is the default, meaning that anytime you create a new matter, LeanLaw is going to, by default, pick that standard rate. Let's say I want to change that standard rate to the shellfish rate. There we go, so from 200 to 250, and then drop down to save changes at the bottom. Okay, so pretty similar questions like we saw before. Do I want to update existing entries? Would be update entries, or do I not want to update existing entries, right? Because we're only changing the rate for this specific matter. So I'm going to say, no, don't update entry. Actually, yes, I do, because that shellfish is what I want to be the standard or the default for this matter. So we're able to go through and pick the the rate we want from this drop down for each individual user. So let's say we created a shellfish rate for each user in the firm. We would be able to go through and pick that shellfish rate. Like so.
Maybe this is a good chance for me to sort of add that we're looking into some improvements here. Specifically, the idea of having rates that run across users or user roles, so that you'd be able to have one shellfish rate and set that for the matter, and it would adjust all the users based on that rate. Currently, especially if you have a lot of users in your firm, this gets a little tedious to adjust them one at a time. So just letting you know that there's some more efficient ways of doing this coming.
Some improvements on the horizon. Always exciting to hear. Karen, to answer your question, yes, it will only change rates for time entries that have not yet been billed. It does not change those for existing entries that have already been billed. And then Katie asked, what did the CC on responsible checkbox mean? I believe she's referring to one of the settings here over in users. Right here, CC on responsible invoices. As the tooltip suggests here, when an email is created for an invoice being sent out, the responsible attorney is automatically CC'd on that email. So if I enabled this for myself, anytime an invoice went out that I was responsible for, or an invoice for a matter that I'm responsible for was emailed, I would get a CC on that. All right, let's pop back to our matter here. Okay, so we've gone through updating rates at the firm level. So at the very top level, we've looked at updating and changing rates at the matter level. Like so, and I do want to mention real quick, you can create custom rates at the matter level here. So if instead of 250 and none of these rates are the one that I want, I can go through and add a custom rate like that. Now, we don't typically advise doing that because it makes updating rates later kind of difficult. You know, if I was using this 300 rate for multiple matters and I wanted to update it at the end of the year, I'd have to go through each matter again and do that. So it's not very efficient. But it is an option if you need to do a one-off for a matter.
So what do we recommend if I am doing a one-off for a matter? How would you do it instead?
So creating a proper rate that would appear in the dropdown.
Right.
So like I've got this shellfish rate. I would use this instead of making a 250 one-off rate. Cool. Let's take a look at the last place we can change those rates, which is actually just on individual time entries. And there's that helpful reminder at the bottom letting me know I've unsaved changes. Very glad to have that. Okay, time entries. So you are able to actually change the rate on individual time entries. So let's go ahead and create a new time entry here. Go ahead and add shellfish. Now you'll notice at the bottom, there isn't any kind of indication that I can change the rate. There is the billable checkbox, which allows me to set it as billable or non-billable, and hours. But if I want to see the rate that is associated with this time entry by default, I'll need to click the standard and advanced flipper up top. And doing that opens the rate option at the bottom here. Now, by default, this is going to show, or the default rate will be whatever you have set on the matter. So for this, it would be the shellfish. Like if I didn't open this up and just save the entry, it would open up at that rate. But if I wanted to change the rate for this individual entry, let's say instead of using the regular shellfish rate, I wanted to use the corporate rate option for this entry as a one-off, I'm able to do that in the middle of making the time entry. That way I don't have to pop back to the matter, change the rate, make the entry, change the rate back. There's just lots of unnecessary steps. So LeanLaw makes it possible for you to do that all the way down to individual time entries. And you can actually do this you can update the rates for time entries even on draft invoices. So if we were to open up a draft invoice, you're able to, as part of that process, that draft process, able to update the rate.
Hey, Chase, I'm wondering if you could show, so let me just say that only certain users have access to the rates.
Correct.
By default, anybody who's not a timekeeper in the system. But maybe you can briefly show where you can control who actually sees the rates. I don't know if you were planning on going there, but this might be.
I wasn't, but that's a great point. So back over in settings here in LeanLaw and then user permissions. So Fred was talking about a couple of options in here. The one he was mentioning in regards to timekeepers is this. So you'll notice the view and adjust rates option is not enabled for timekeepers, and that's by default. Typically, you don't want your timekeepers to be able to go in and add or adjust rates. But if we did want to, we could enable them here. Now, most other roles in the firm do have the ability to view and adjust rates by default. So let's say we wanted to take away that ability for everybody except for principal and operator users. We would do that, drop down to the bottom and save changes like so.
And just as an aside, adjusting permissions is a pro-only feature. Or if you signed up for LeanLaw early on, what we call Pioneer. But if you just have our core subscription, you will just have to sort of live with the default that Chase mentioned.
Yep, that's correct. That's why picking the role that is most closely aligned with what the user needs to be doing is important. Sometimes you may find that you've got a paralegal who needs the permissions of an operator because they happen to be doing more. And it's often easier to just switch them to that role instead of trying to finagle the paralegal role permissions, especially if you don't have the LeanLaw Pro options for user permissions. Deanna's got a question. What does the horizontal line signify under timekeeper in the time entry section?
Oh, all that, the horizontal line, if you click that, Chase, it just means that some boxes are checked and some are not checked. And when you check it up there, it's just a way to quickly see that either the boxes are checked or not checked, or it's a mix. That's what that means.
That's a good question. Yeah, it's a way to allow you to quickly see if they have mixed permissions and all permissions or none. So I don't have to click into clients and matters to see, oh yeah, the timekeeper doesn't have full permissions. Fred, did I miss anything with rates? I think I got through everything.
Yeah, I think so. I already mentioned sort of our upcoming features that allow you to manage rates a little better across roles and across matters. So you'll be looking for those to. I think it could be as soon as it'll be in the next month or two, is my expectation. But yeah, I think you went through. So yeah, let us know if you have questions in the chat about any of what Chase went through. I think that the most difficult thing is probably kind of understanding those questions that come up when you change rates. And there's a lot of words there when you change a rate, and you know, all the information is there. So you know, reach out if you forget how it works, and we can help. But hopefully Chase was able to clarify some of this.
And like Fred said, we are making changes here. So if you have any suggestions or there's pain points that you experience in rates, you know, updating rates is a huge pain, or changing rates at the beginning of the year for, you know, annual increases, please do let us know, because your feedback absolutely affects the changes that we make.
Yeah. We have a couple of questions. One from Katie asking why is it called a timekeeper? I mean, if you go to the roles, we see them here: timekeeper, paralegal, attorney, principal, operator, and accountant. Maybe the names are not great for all of these. I'll be the first one to admit. But we a timekeeper is really intended to be somebody who just enters time and does very little else in the system. They also by default enter expenses, but it's really, you know, it spans a number of job descriptions that clearly it's not a job description, but it's really just we really should be looking at these roles more as what access do you need in the system, and be less hung up on whether it's your job title or not.
I have never met someone who described to me their job title as being timekeeper.
No, exactly.
Usually it's intern.
You know, I honestly would love to call it something else, but that was the best we could come up with. The other one that may be a little unclear is operator, since we're on this topic. Operators in other systems tend to be maybe called admins or something. Like it's essentially somebody who is in it's like a billing person or an office person that have by default full access rights, can do most things, is in charge of certain workflows like the billing workflow and so on, but it's not really so you know, most pages they go to are you know, if you're an operator, you will go to the time entry page or the billing page, and it won't be selected. It won't just show you your stuff. It will show you everybody's stuff. And that's typically what an operator and an accountant wants. Whereas an attorney or a principal, they're more, you know, the UI is more tuned to just showing them their stuff, so that you know, when you go to a page, it's ready to show you just what you're working on. That's kind of the idea. But yeah, so I think that's a little bit on roles. There's another question here. Did you want to add something about roles, Chase?
I actually just wanted to say, Denora asked a question that perfectly segues into the next billing type.
Okay, why don't you take that?
I will do just that. Let's see. So we're going to jump back to our shellfish matter here.
Yeah, the question is if there's a way to take hourly billing and convert to a flat rate. I think the answer, unfortunately, is no. Strictly speaking, you can't take a time entry that you've made and convert it into a fixed fee, what we call a fixed fee. But Chase is going to talk about the different billing types we have, and also can probably cover what a fixed fee is independent of that.
Yes,
so
and
hopefully it should be clear by the end of this section.
I think the answer might actually be yes.
Okay.
The phrasing might just be a little odd.
Right.
But Denora, if I don't answer the question in this next section, please do let me know. So I'm going to skip contingency for a second. I know that's next up, but to explain contingency first, we'll need fixed fee. Now, hourly is primarily hourly based. We're tracking our time. We're entering our reimbursable expenses. Everything is hunky-dory, and that's usually the standard for most firms is hourly. Fixed fee is another one that is actually surprising to me, incredibly common. Now, the context of fixed fee is instead of billing per hour, the firm agrees with the client, hey, we'll do this work at a flat rate. Let's say Fred has entertained my services, and there's a $5,000 charge. Regardless of the amount of time that's spent, someone's getting paid $5,000 at the end of this. Now, that excludes reimbursable expenses or the prepaid expenses. The idea is you're instead of being on an hourly model, you now have this fixed amount. It's really common in IP, intellectual property firms, where they know the amount of time it's going to take, they know the paperwork they're going to have to file, and they say, this is the flat charge for the work I'm going to do. We're also seeing an increase in firms switching from hourly to fixed fee because there's reporting incentives and some revenue incentives we can talk about a little bit later, not in LeanLaw, but in the way that the firm is structured, that definitely favors fixed fee. So a little bit of background about fixed fees. Let's actually take a look at them. So let's go with that example of the $5,000 that I wanted to cover. So next to billing and rates is the fixed fees option. And I believe we actually covered this last time. So I'll quickly breeze through this. Going to go ahead and add a $5,000 fee. Gonna pick today. There we go. And create fixed fee. We have to assign it to user.
Maybe pause here. Oh, okay, go ahead. Open that again. Katie just asked the question if there's a way to have a combined fixed fee where after a certain number of hours, it flips to a rate. That there is that option down here on hour limit. If you set an hour limit down here, let's say 10, we build a fixed fee up to that limit, and then anything above that will be billed at the rate you put in here. It's sort of limiting. It's not anyway. That's I think what you're asking for. Let us know if this doesn't quite work for you, but I think that's where you want to look.
Yes, and actually, the second half of Katie's question and Karen's question, I'm going to answer now. So like I said, even though we're able to create a fixed fee, let's go ahead and save changes there. Don't update. Now, oftentimes you're still going to want to track your time on a case that is a fixed fee, whether it's fixed fee billing type or includes a fixed fee. Now, when you have a matter set as a fixed fee billing type, all of the time entries default to being non-billable, right? Because you're billing that fixed amount. However, you still want to be able to track time and associate that time with your time entries. So if I go ahead and open up a new time entry here for the shellfish matter, you'll see at the bottom, there's now an include in fixed fee option, meaning that the time I track and assign include in fixed fee will go towards that hour limit. So once I have included 10 hours worth of time in this fixed fee, it will flip to billing at that $300 rate. So, and the hours actually are reported against. There's a couple of reports, I believe it's fixed fee profitability that we can take a look at here that directly shows the amount of hours you tracked for the fee and the total value of the fee. That way you can see the final profitability of that fee based on the amount of time you spent on it.
I want to, there's a couple of questions, let's get to those, but I want to, oh, they're pouring in here. This is a hot topic apparently. I want to just, Chase, you said it, but I want to make it clear because this is really confusing. Like go back to matters. You really have to separate the idea of a fixed fee matter versus an hourly matter with the fixed fee itself. So the if your matter is marked as a fixed fee, by default, all the time entries are non-billable or included in the fixed fee. If a matter is marked hourly, all the time entries by default are marked hourly. Sorry, billable. In both cases, you can bill out a fixed fee or bill hourly. Like a fixed fee matter can have hours that are billed hourly, and an hourly matter can have fixed fees in it. It's in the end, it's really just what is the default when the billing, the default of the time entries you create, are they non-billable or billable? It's confusing. It sounds confusing when I say it to myself here, but that's I'm hoping that that makes sense.
And Anna, to answer your question, yes, there is a way. And regardless of where you're at, not just in billing, you can add fixed fees from the quick create option up here. That's the plus button. There is a fixed fee option that you're able to add a fixed fee directly from anywhere in LeanLaw now. My goodness. Katie asks, let's see, missed your direction of an hourly matter with a fixed fee versus fixed fee matter.
Yeah, so I don't know if you typed that in before. I confused you with my explanation. But an hourly matter with a fixed fee, you can mark a matter can be hourly. You track time against it and so on, and you can add a fixed fee to that hourly matter, and it'll just be the resulting invoice will be a combination of hourly line items and then a fixed fee line item. So that's the hourly one. You can do the same with a fixed fee matter, except as I said, the default for time entries when you enter them will be that they are non-billable.
Let's see, Karen asks about the fixed fee matter. So if you mark a matter as fixed fee and you add a fee and mark it as billable and uncheck include in fixed fee, will that bill in addition to the flat fee? Yes, it will be tracked as a regular billable hour. So whatever the rate is, it will be tracked as that.
Yeah.
Fixed fee matter is marked non-billable by default. Yes, fixed fee matters, any hours tracked are marked non-billable by default. If you have a fixed fee within an hourly matter, right, because you can make fixed fees in hourly billing type matters, the hours are not marked as default. That only applies when the type of billing is set to fixed fee. Deanna, yes, there's only one rate that you can set in that hour limit box.
Yeah, and Karen mentioned an idea that, hey, maybe that rate should just depend on the timekeeper. So that's a good idea. So anyway, we'd love to hear from you if you think this particular hour limit feature needs to be expanded. But
so Deanna asked a question I actually don't know the answer to. Would it apply to everyone who enters time or just the invoice user? The limit rate?
Everyone.
Okay. That's good to know. That was a learning moment for me as well. I'd actually never considered that. Let's see. And Anna asks, last question before we move on, because we got a whole lot of these. Anna asks, let's see, usually change whether it's fixed fee or hourly in billing before I send to draft.
Let's get back to that, Chase. I think one thing we want to do is just quickly look at reports, because we talked a lot about fixed fees. One thing we have that goes with a fixed fee matter is the fixed fee profitability report, and we did have a question about this, I think. So here, if you have marked a matter, a fixed fee matter, it'll appear in this report. You can see how much you build out or will build out for the fixed fee, the hours, and then the difference. So you can basically see if you're sort of profitable on the fixed fee and spot any fixed fees that might need to be adjusted. So that's a quick little tool you can use.
Yeah, and you'll see the Krabby Lobster is the client here that we made earlier. So there's that matter. So we see the 5,000 fixed fee, excuse me, and then the time we tracked against that.
Oh, this looks a little out of alignment, this report. I'm making a note.
Some homework for Fred to get to.
All right, I think we should go back to the other billing types, Chase.
Yep, let's do it. So I'm going to go ahead and open up that matter again. So we skipped contingency, and that's the one I'm going to talk about next. So contingency, for anyone who isn't familiar, because this is a wildly interesting subject, contingency is basically a fixed fee matter that you work on for years and then pay off with trust at the end. And that is a wildly overcomplicated or oversimplified answer. But contingency does basically function as a fixed fee matter. So the idea is you set your billing type to contingency. All of your time entries are set to non-billable by default. And then at the end, so instead of in the beginning of the case creating a fixed fee, you create that fee at the end of the case when you're closing after it's been settled. And that fee is then going to be whatever the firm receives as part of that settlement. So that's the fixed fee and time entries part. It gets real interesting when you start to consider the expenses, because with those expenses, you're able to add interest on them. So because these contingency cases tend to last months and months and sometimes into years, the firms want to be able to charge interest on some of these expenses. So when we flip to contingency billing type, you'll see the option here for adding interest to expenses.
How do you set the interest rate?
Good question. That is over in settings. So we'll go, and actually the tooltip here tells you that. But I did look that up beforehand, Fred, because I knew you were going to ask that. The way we set that interest rate is, yep, I'm going to go ahead and cancel these, is settings, and then the billing option under team settings. At the very bottom here, we've got an interest on expenses percentage that we can set.
Yeah, so you can set it for the firm as a whole. We don't currently have a way to adjust that by client, but so.
Right, and Karen brings up, if the firm loses the case, they will not get paid at all.
Yeah.
So that is one of the, for me, it's one of the interesting parts of contingency work, but does interest on expenses apply to anything other than the contingency matter expense?
No.
I believe, yeah, it's only for contingency matter types. In addition to the lovely expense interest feature and the contingency fee percentage, once you enable any matters for contingency billing type, you'll notice two, oh my goodness, I did it again. That's why we added that at the bottom. As I was saying, when you add a contingency matter type, you'll notice two new reports, the contingency statement and the expense period report. These both only apply to contingency, or only will report on matters that are listed as contingency. So first is contingency statement, and this is kind of like a work in progress report for your contingency cases. So like I said, because they tend to go on for long periods, you or the partner, whomever, will want to see how the case is doing, the expenses total, how much time you've put in, what the trust account looks like when you're getting ready to close, percentage of fee breakdown. Yes, this will be recorded, Zena. So that's the contingency statement, my goodness. And then this other report is the expense period report. So similar type of report, it's just exclusive to expenses. So you're able to look at the total running balance.
Can you go back to the first report and then click in? Quite often, when you have one of these, so I guess there's not a lot of data here.
Not that I can look at.
Oh, that is okay.
If we reset the filters.
Here's the full view of the expenses for that contingency case, and it's an example of one report that's actually meant to be, in some cases, client facing. Some you can give to a client. So we have a print for client option here. When you use that, we'll take your information from QuickBooks and try and create a header and a nice looking page, and then print, and you can print this out and give it to the client. Some reports have this print for client option, and some don't because they're clearly just meant for internal use. So anyway, just a little subtlety there.
Good to point out. And there's some options like print for client. I know the allocation report is another one. Some of the revenue reports have extra printing options. So let's jump back to our shellfish matter. So that is a very basic overview of what contingency does in LeanLaw, very similar to fixed fee. The last thing I forgot to mention was actually once the case is closed, assuming the firm does win, you would then do the trust part of that, which is you record whatever the firm receives as part of the settlement coming in, pay the invoice, and then disperse the rest out to the client. But again, that's going to depend on how the individual firm runs things.
Yeah, the closing, the sort of disbursement part of a contingency workflow is not, honestly not fully supported by LeanLaw. It's a little bit manual because there's so many corner cases and ways that you might want to do it. What we have is we have the reports available that you can see, how much time did you spend, how much expenses was accrued. You can calculate, your fee. We have the tools to, take trust funds and disperse it. We don't have a good way to sort of automate all that, but all the pieces are there for you to do all that sort of manually. And if you're unsure how you do this, then yeah, let us know and we can help with the best practice of doing it.
And actually, that reminds me, I completely forgot some of the other special contingency billing options here. So again, because contingency goes on for months and months and you don't want to accidentally bill it, any cases or any matters set to contingency by default will not show up in ready to bill. So you don't accidentally invoice them when you're going through doing your regular invoicing. When it's time to bill those matters, you'll want to come into ready to bill and then enable the contingency matters filter option. So that's show clients ... contingency matters. So now this is going to include matters that we have set as contingency.
And the workflow here is typically that you would calculate the fee that you want to pay yourself, probably plus the expenses that you've accrued, and then go in here. So add that fixed fee based on whatever you need to base that on, and then come in here and bill it.
Yep, exactly. So yeah. And I do believe actually that there's a special include in option. Well, no, they're just marked as non-billable. Never mind.
Karen asked if you can, on that billing page we were just looking at, can you have it only show the contingency matters? And not currently. It's just the checkbox really just means whether they're included or not. I'm kind of wondering whether we should, if you have that checked, it should flip and only show the contingency matters. That would actually make sense now that I think about it. So that would be a good thing for us
to Fred.
Yeah, thanks for that suggestion. Okay, other people are giving thumbs up for that one, I guess. Okay,
looks that goes up the list of importance, doesn't it? Okay, so that just about does it for contingency, which brings us to the last two types of billing, which are pro bono and internal. So pro bono is actually pretty straightforward. It functions very similar to fixed fee in that all of the entries are marked as non-billable by default. You don't have to include a fixed fee, but it is just everything is by default set to non-billable. And the last is internal, which is very much similar in that everything is marked as non-billable, with the exception that internal matters do not show up in reporting. So pro bono does because it's still client-facing work, but internal is meant for internal usage. Like if I'm tracking.
Well, and pro bono has the option to add billable hours or expenses. Internal doesn't. The idea with internal is if you want to track time for internal productivity reasons, you put that in here. But there's nothing else that you can do with an internal matter, and we hide them from all the billing pages and billing reports and so on. So
yep, the drop downs in a lot of places too. So pro bono and internal, pretty straightforward. And I actually believe that is my entire spiel about different types of billing. So if we have any questions.
I have one note that I think you forgot. There's under the rates, the rates report. I think we forgot to mention that.
That's a good one to point out. Go ahead and go over to our reports, and then at the bottom is the matter rates report, is what Fred is referring to. So this shows a breakdown of all of the rates for all of the matters in the firm for each of the users. So this can get quite large quite quickly depending on the size of the firm. So you'll notice up top. Fred, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, since we're talking rates, I thought we need to show this. It's really just for sort of auditing your rates. You print this out, God forbid, or you export it, and you can sort of review the rates across the firm. It's meant as a sort of an auditing tool. As I said before, we're looking into having better tools for managing rates across matters and across roles and users. So we might be updating some of this that makes it a little easier to manage. But yeah.
Excellent. Are there any other reports that I'm missing? I mean, we could spend, I think we have spent an entire meeting, an entire webinar just discussing reports.
There's a question, before we get to the question that was just asked about client matter-based billing. I did want to, so if you go to matters and the billing tab that we go to a matter here again. There we go. The billing and rates tab that we now have learned to love. Thank you, Chase.
You're welcome.
We used to fear it, now we love it. The one thing you didn't really cover here was what happens when you change the billing type. So you can actually do this, and it's not as scary as it might be, but there's one of those scary questions asked when you do that. So if you have an hourly billing rate, we have the hourly matter type. We have the option to flip all the time entries to non-billable if we change it to a fixed fee, or vice versa. You get a question about whether you want to flip all the time entries to non-billable or to billable, depending on which matter type you are switching to or from. So just as an FYI there. But the question was from Lee, what happens when you change, and if this is under the QuickBooks tab, Chase. We have, I mean, this goes a little bit beyond the topic today, but this accounting type, we have the option of picking client accounting or matter accounting. By the way, this is a pro-only user feature. If you're a core user, you are thankfully not, don't have to worry about this. But when you change from a client to a matter accounting, as the notice said right here, we can go ahead and basically we will go ahead and create matters for you in QuickBooks, so that, you know, before, because it was client accounting, there was only a client there. If you change it to matter accounting, we'll go in and create all those matters in there. When you change it back, we do not give you the option to remove those matters. We'll leave everything intact. In both cases, we also leave all transactions intact that are already in there. So if you change from client to matter-based, there'll be a bunch of transactions, potentially invoices, payments, and so on at the client level that might need to be moved to the matter level. So this can get a little hairy from an accounting point of view. And so if you have to do this for one client, you can probably figure it out. If you have to do it sort of en masse, or for if you change your mind and have done this for a while with one model and you need to change it to the other one, we might need to talk to see if we can help. But it's it gets a little hairy changing this.
Yes, it does.
And you know, and there was a question, what about when you change it from matter to client? We will just apply that to future transactions, so that, you know, when you create invoices and trusts and so on, from that point forward, those things will go in at the the client level. Any existing trust transactions and invoices and payments are left in place. Now, if you move from matter to client, maybe we could do a little more in terms of automating that, but we don't currently. So be aware that if you have clients with lots of accounting activity, this is not a trivial undertaking necessarily.
And moving from matter to client, Fred, correct me if I'm wrong here, but both trust and the transactions in QuickBooks will just be consolidated back to the client level. So you
Well,
you
no, that's what I'm saying. We do not actually do that. It's in QuickBooks, everything is left in place, and going forward, things going in at the client level. In LeanLaw, things are reported at the client level, but yeah, I think that hopefully that's enough. If I say anything else, it'll probably be more confusing.
This is definitely one of the most interesting conversations I get in support, is finding out someone has switched back and forth between the two and made transactions and then removed transactions. And
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah, I think in the future, we probably will be building in a little more automation here so that you can switch, but it is not possible to fully automate certain scenarios here. So that's why it's a little tricky. Okay, I think we have 10 minutes left, Chase. I think, I can spend that time on just sort of highlighting some things we're working on right now, or what do you think?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. And Katie, I know you've got 2 questions that we didn't quite get to. Go ahead and send us a message in the support chat, and I will answer those with you once we're done.
All right. Let me share my screen, Chase.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so I don't have that much to share. I had some exciting stuff last time I showed around some changes we're making to the client and matter navigation, and what we call a one-click client overview that we're close to releasing. This time it's going to be a little more boring, but still.
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Come on. The people that have asked for this feature are absolutely in the chat here, and they're excited about it.
Okay, maybe so.
Plus, it makes my life more interesting.
The biggest thing is we're just about to release what we call adjustments, or time entry adjustments, which is fairly simple when you show it, but it has some fairly significant reporting implications. When you go to a time entry, you enter time and all is good. Once you get to billing, let's find a draft invoice here maybe. Those time entries go on an invoice with the descriptions and the hours and so on. Now, if you edit the hours on the invoice, on the draft invoice, let's say in this case from 2 to 1, you'll see this little, or you will see soon, this little thing appearing where we keep track of the original amount of time that was tracked on that time entry, and then you're able to update the hours that's actually billed. So so that's the feature in a nutshell. Before this, when you changed the number of hours, we basically lost track of the original time tracked, which has some reporting issues. But anyway, it applies to when you edit draft invoices, and we keep track of the original time there. Now we take advantage of that over in reports, specifically these productivity reports, where you will now see eventually hours tracked, and then here you see those adjustments outlined here by user, and various calculations in terms of their value, non-billable, billable hours, total hours, adjustments, tracked hours, value, et cetera, all the way over here to how much each user did in terms of adjustments. So you can see here, Courtney spent a bunch of time, but we had to write her hours down by 20%, which is maybe a performance problem, maybe not. But that's what you'd be able to see here. You can drill in and see this by client and matter. So there's that detail. You can also see this from the client perspective. So you can see, hey, are there certain clients or matters we're writing down more than others, and is that a problem? So so that's really that feature in a nutshell. We're almost done with the QA of this and ready to release it. It's going to be a pro only feature, although if you're a core user, we will track some of this behind the scenes. And so if you want to have this information be made available, when you upgrade, you will have historical data available as well. So it just won't be visible to you until you upgrade. So that's the one thing I wanted to show. I think
a lot of questions for you.
Oh boy. Let's see.
Starting from the top, Denora asks, is there a way to show the client the value of these non-billed adjustments on the invoice?
Oh, no. It's interesting because we actually have had in the past some requests for more flexibility there on the invoice. and we're a little bit limited because we use QuickBooks as the invoice presentation engine, I guess. And so we really would like to be able to add more columns on the invoice for the align items, so we can show stuff like this, but we don't have that capability. What I could maybe see is that we somehow add something to the description of the of that line item. So for example, if we go back here, I mean, you can do this manually. You can, if you adjust this down, you can manually say, worked, 2 hours up here or something. And the client would see this in the description, and they would see this, that they're actually billing. I am wondering if we could maybe automate something like that, where we would automatically add this to line items that you adjust. That's probably as far as we would be able to go. Currently, you would have to manually add it to the description as the kind of the shorter answer. So hopefully that helps. Am I missing other? I've lost track of the questions. Maybe you can ask them, Chase.
Yep. So Katie's got a question of, can you please make one where we can easily write off invoices after they're in draft? I'm going to assume.
Oh, yeah. So that gets into write-offs of not time entries, which was what I was really talking about here, but invoices in general. I mean, I can show here there is a way down here. We call it credit, but it can be used to write down stuff on an invoice. Maybe you were not aware of that, so you can do adjustments for the invoice as a whole down here. So that's one option. But once it gets to QuickBooks, you have to do it in QuickBooks. If you want to either write off an invoice, there's ways to do that, void them completely, or write them down by a certain amount. We don't. I would like to at some point provide the capability directly from here to do that, so that you can write off or write down invoices. But right now, that's something you'd have to go to QuickBooks to do. Other questions?
Anna just letting us know what you described with the adjustments in the description. That's actually what she currently does.
Okay, so got it. So it sounds like that would be kind of cool to automate that, maybe. I like that idea.
And
sorry,
Wendell, I'm not quite sure what you're referring to when you say between the two matters you're speaking about, but I think we're just about out of time. So if you want to go ahead and just start a chat with us in the support chat, I'll hop on after the call and help answer some of those remaining questions.
Yeah, so I guess we are out of time. In terms of the adjustments here, watch out for a pop-up in your product from Chase announcing it. Other than that, hopefully this was helpful. We really appreciate this. Is so much better when you guys are engaged and ask questions. These sessions are a little too big for us to do sort of a full meetup where we can just kind of talk directly. But we really appreciate that you're so engaged, and it helps us and makes it fun. So
it does make it way more interesting. I mean, people ask, Chase, what do you do? And I want to say, I have these great relationships with all of these users, but I can't express to my friends how valuable these kinds of interactions are, or the day-to-day, like, hey, Chase, this doesn't work, or we'd like to see a change here. I mean, it's not just answering questions all day. It's getting to, build these relationships with you all and take your feedback and then tell Fred, hey, lots of these lovely individuals would like this feature. Make it happen now. So thank you all.
Yeah. So we'll see you next month.
We'll catch you all next time. See ya.